In today's episode, we're going to be talking about the morality of food and why there shouldn't be any. Stay tuned.
You're listening to the Wellness Simplified podcast. Simple wellness tips to help you improve your life without turning it upside down. With your host, award-winning fitness instructor, nutrition coach, and wellness expert, Susie Fevens.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm so happy to have you here. As always, if you're not already subscribed in iTunes or your favorite podcasting platform, I'd be oh so grateful if you would hit that subscribe button. And if you are listening on iTunes, if you left me a review, even if it's just a star review, not a written review, it really does help to get the podcast out into more listeners' ears. And for that, I am very appreciative. So today we're talking about the morality of food and why we really need to get away from assigning moral value to the foods that we eat. This isn't something that I think most of us grew up with. Food was just food. But this latest generation, my generation, seems to have really enforced some morals on what food is good and what food is bad. And I want to talk about that a little bit. Before we really get into this, I have a couple of things to say. First of all, I am not calling anyone specific out. I'm just talking about some behaviors that I've noticed over the last, I've noticed it over a long period. But more specifically, there's been a couple instances in the last couple of weeks where people have said things that made me go, And secondly, I am not a registered dietitian. I am not somebody who helps people who are recovering from eating disorders and things of that nature. And I don't think that this is going to be triggering, but if you are someone who is in recovery, you may want to skip this episode just in case it is triggering for you. The morality of food. Okay, so let's talk about the conversation that made this pop into my head as a good podcast episode. I was talking to someone recently, and they were talking about their children, and just, in casual conversation said, my kids have never been to McDonald's, and said that when they drive by McDonald's, her oldest kids will say, like, Mommy, what is that? And she'll just say, oh, I don't know, and just pretend she doesn't know what McDonald's is. And you know what? That's fine, and not that big of a deal. But you know what else really isn't that big of a deal? Letting your kid have a Happy Meal. Truly. Now, if we want to talk about the healthiness of food, yeah, chicken nuggets are a little questionable, right? They're a little questionable. But if you look up the ingredients in a McDonald's hamburger, it's a pretty benign product. In fact, I just went online to look up the ingredients in a McDonald's regular hamburger. And so you have your regular bun, which of course has a number of ingredients in it because it is a bun, but it's no different than buying a hamburger bun at the grocery store. It's got 100% pure beef patty. It has ketchup. It has pickle slices, onions, mustard, and grill seasoning, which is salt, pepper, sunflower oil. Used as a processing aid, it says. That's it. There isn't a whole bunch of frankenfoods, if you want to use that term in there. Yeah, obviously the bun's going to have some enrichment and some things to help prolong its shelf life, but it's no different than buying bread at the store, unless you're buying like fresh baked bread. And some people are fine. But when you look at the ingredients of a regular hamburger at McDonald's, it is not anything to be all that excited about or worked up about. And then because I mentioned chicken nuggets, I did look that up too. And it has a few more things. It has boneless, skinless chicken breast, water, vegetable oil shortening, wheat flour, yellow corn flour, modified cornstarch, rice starch, salt, baking powder, seasoning, which is wheat starch, yeast extract, salt, vegetable source natural flavor, whatever that is, spices, canola oil, sodium aluminum phosphate, dextrose, wheat starch, cornstarch, and it's cooked in vegetable oil. So there is more stuff in it. But again, it's really no worse than if you're buying like chicken nuggets from the grocery store. But we have this morality attached to it, or some people do, not everybody, some people do, in that they feel somehow morally superior if they don't allow their kids to have fast food. Now, thinking back to my childhood, we didn't have McDonald's a lot. We were a family of 5, and we didn't go to McDonald's. We didn't go to the town where they had McDonald's all that frequently, but we did have it occasionally when we were out and about. And it was not that we were purposely avoiding it. It's just that my mother made most of our meals at home. So when we had it, it was a treat. And when you get to have things like that occasionally, you become to understand that it is not something that is necessarily off limits. It's not something that you're not allowed to have. It's just something that you don't have all of the time because that's not the life you're living. And then there's probably some kids who had McDonald's all of the time because maybe their parents didn't have time to cook meals. And back in the 80s and early 90s, pre-made meals, we're talking like those TV dinners, and those were not good. Those were not good. But my point is, when you get to have these things occasionally, you know what they are, you get to enjoy them, and there is no negative morality. There's no negative emotion connected to that food. It's just like something that you either like or you dislike. You have it or you don't have it. But you're not better than anybody else because you do or don't have it. It's just food. And of course, obviously, you do not need me to tell you that you should be eating lots of vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, healthy fats, fiber. I don't need to tell you that. You know that. But also, you should know that eating a meal from McDonald's is better than not eating any meal at all. And I know lots of people who would just, if their only option was McDonald's or Burger King, well, I would be with them. I don't like Burger King. If my only option was Burger King, I don't know. I mean, I'd still get something. I'd get like fries, and they must have onion rings. I'd probably get chicken strips. I digress. It doesn't matter. Eating something is better than eating nothing. Eating something is better than being nothing. So it might not be your first choice, but it's better than nothing. Maybe it is your first choice, and then it's a hell of a lot better than nothing. But either way, wherever you fall on that scale, acknowledging that having fast food now and again really is not a big deal is important. The more off limits we make it, the more we associate eating fast food with negative thoughts, emotions, the more we are upholding that diet culture and upholding the thoughts that lead often to eating disorders. So, food is not a moral thing. Food is nourishment. And let me tell you, I don't think there is a soul alive who, if given the opportunity to starve to death or eat McDonald's, would choose to starve to death. It's food. It's there to nourish you. And truly, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not great, but it's not that bad. And you know what? It's pretty tasty now and then. I wouldn't want to eat it every day, but it's pretty tasty from time to time. And another side of the coin is times when maybe you're traveling as a family. Eating out is expensive and you have to eat out. You can't always make all of your meals. There's always going to be a situation where you need to eat out. And fast food restaurants are pretty consistent and they're pretty readily available. So if your kids have gone to a couple fast food restaurants and you know what they like there, whether you're at home or you're the next city over or you're in a different part of the country, chances are you're going to be able to find that restaurant and find a meal that they like. I don't have kids, but I know that going to a regular sit-down restaurant with kids can be a bit of a nightmare because they just want to have, like, chicken nuggets. McDonald's has chicken nuggets. They're called McNuggets. Anyway, let's really challenge ourselves when it comes to thinking about food as moral and immoral. It's food. It's there to nourish you. And yeah, it might not be your first choice or your fifth choice, but it is a choice and it is a fine choice. It's a fine choice. And if we could all just mind our own damn business and let people eat the food that they want to eat or they can afford to eat or they have access to eat, we would all be in a better place if we didn't try to control what went in other people's mouths. Of course, if they're your small children, that's your job. But stop judging people based on what restaurant they eat at. Just stop judging. It's none of your business. It's none of your business. If you see your neighbor coming home with fast food every single day, you know whose business that is? Not yours. It's theirs. So food is not immoral. It's not moral. It is an inanimate object there to help sustain life. Listen, cavemen, they would have gone crazy for McDonald's if they would have had that as an option. Instead of eating like roots and sticks and whatever they were eating. They would have loved it. Again, obviously, eating it every day isn't going to be the best option for health in general, but judging people, making people feel guilty, making them feel ashamed, increasing their stress levels because of how they are perceived because of the food that they eat, that does have a very negative impact on their health. So take off your judgy McJudgerson eyes. Stop vilifying foods, and just know that having a burger now and again is just fine. In fact, if you look at the ingredients in a protein bar versus the ingredients that we already listed off from a McDonald's regular hamburger, there's a whole lot more sketchy stuff in a protein bar than there is in a hamburger. And that's where we're going to wrap it up today. So food is not moral. Not allowing people to eat certain foods for any reason other than an allergy or an intolerance is unnecessary. You don't need to lie about what something is. Again, I know with kids, sometimes you have to lie about things just to keep your sanity. But my point is, eating at McDonald's once in a while, eating at Dairy Queen, eating at A&W, whatever, is not that big of a deal. Most all of us ate fast food occasionally, at least growing up, and we are fine. We are fine. That's it for today's episode. I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And I hope maybe this will make you think a little bit about how you perceive other people when you see them eating out or buying groceries or whatever. Newsflash, it's none of your beeswax.